All right. Thank you for being here on Hypnotic Talks. If you could just introduce yourself, your name, what you do, and then I'm just gonna start talking from there.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Yeah.
My name is Gergely Mesterhazy Nagy, or I go by Greg because no one can say my name.
Yeah.
And I do a practice called biomagnetism or biomagnetic pair therapy, which is a fascinating practice of applying um, high Gauss strength magnets that look like this, just
Yeah.
tiny little magnets, come in different sizes. Traditionally, they are round, they are like a disc, and we place them on very specific points on the body to
Hmm.
balance, the biofield, the electromagnetic circuitry of the body. Also helps with pH balance. And yeah, I've been practicing this for the last 5 years or so, full time in the last 3 years, and totally changed my life. This work
Yeah.
really changed my
That's
life.
interesting. Yeah, because I'm sure you're helping to change other people's lives, but then it changed your life. And how is that though? Because you are doing it to help others, right? Did you apply it to yourself or how did that
Oh
start?
yes, you can see, if you see me driving around or like sometimes on the street, I will probably have magnets on.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I practice what I preach, and I try not to preach so much. Um, yeah, so it had to start with changing my life first, because,
Hmm.
I was really sick with Lyme disease, chronic Lyme, for probably majority of my adult life. I probably got it when I was a teenager back in Hungary. We had a big garden. I remember picking ticks off of myself left and right,
Hmm.
all the time. We were really close to the forest. We were just hanging out, rolling around in the grass all the time with my siblings. So, and then I started having strange symptoms as a teenager, but they were ignored. And also, just I was told, oh, it's autoimmune, there's nothing to do about it, just learn how to live with it. And, I tried so many different therapies. And later on, I was probably like 28, 29, 30 when I started getting really sick.
Hmm.
Like, symptoms of chronic Lyme, classic brain fog, joint aches, gut issues, sleep issues, backache, kind of arthritic pain all the time, um, you name it. I basically was just struggling. I was basically a zombie, is
Yeah.
what I tell people. And I tried hyperbaric therapy, sauna, ozone, red light, you name it, like taking supplements, taking IVs. There was a point when I would have twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, IVs to support the detox just to get by in my work.
That's really interesting because I feel like there's a lot of people who have to do this where they get really curious and they start trying all of these different like health techniques, the cures or medicines, supplements. And this happens a lot. So I'm always trying to see like the bright side of things, which is you probably would have never tried any of that stuff, right? Because it came from this like I'm gonna do anything and like who knows it'll work. It's worth a shot. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
totally. Yeah. That's what I was. And then I was working as a technical project manager at the time when a colleague of mine happened to be also a Hungarian lady. Um, we were working at Pinterest together and we were just jamming and talking and kind of like, catching up. When somehow the conversation got to Lyme disease, and I told her, hey, I'm struggling with Lyme disease. You can't tell because, I do all these things to be able to do my work and show up and all that. But when I'm off, I'm like flat, you know?
Yeah.
And so she said, well, if you have Lyme disease, go see Dr. Garcia in New Jersey. He's got a 6 months wait list, but
Whoa.
it's worth it. And so I contacted him. I scheduled an appointment, I waited my 6 months and I started going to see him. I was living in Hawaii at the time, and I would travel to New Jersey 2 weeks at a time over a year and a half.
Hmm.
And so basically, what happened is Dr. Garcia started muscle testing me. I was on a massage table, and he used my legs to muscle test and put a bunch of magnets all over me. And I started feeling stuff, like things were moving and changing, and I felt different. Like, whoa, what's happening? So I started asking him questions immediately. And he started explaining, okay, these pairs are for, your pituitary, your temporal lobes that will help with brain fog because there is an imbalance in the pH between the two lobes that are creating this environment when your brain is not functioning optimally.
Hmm.
And man, after the first session, I thought I was gonna like flatline. It was so intense. The detox from it was
Yes.
very intense. And that's I just had to go through that. And then the next day I felt a little better, and then the next day I felt a little better. And I got a set of magnets from him that I immediately started learning. Okay, so what do I do between sessions, between I come see you, right? And
Right.
explain to me, and that's what I do with my clients. I set people up to maintain that environment that we created in a session so that they continue getting better.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, sometimes there's those people who help others, and they say like the whole point is for you to like never come back. You know what I mean? Instead
Right.
of just being like this repeating problem.
And I like to think, and I know that's what I do. I like to work myself out of a job. As a project manager, that was my job to basically create,
Yeah.
structures and practices and systems that basically eliminated my job. And then I was like, okay, it's done. Now I'm on to the next. So when I come from an abundance mindset, that's easy, right? That's great.
You're now a project manager for healing or something, right?
I am, so that's what I do. I set people up for success, and I really work with the best who are at the point when they tried everything, and I was at the point when, magnets, what the heck?
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
willing to try it as like whatever, get me better, you know? And so that's what I do with my clients. I show them points that their body are is telling me that they would benefit from conditioning to that new state, that new homeostatic state that can help them get even better. So if you repeat the placements, which interacts with your own inner electromagnetic circuitry, and that's not news that we
Hmm.
have a heart, we have a brain,
Yeah.
and all of our cells are constantly creating electricity, electromagnetism.
Right.
So just using, and there's so many technologies, even, you know, transcranial magnetic stimulation, MRI, EKG, EEG, all these are electromagnetic technologies for human health
Yes.
benefits.
Yes.
So we take a little easier approach or a little simple simpler approach by using static magnets. So the electricity is coming from you. These are just magnets, right? So they have
Yes.
a pretty big field. Oops. Yeah, hold on. What am I doing? I just want to show you the field in between them. So
Yes.
it's like here, right? It's a pretty big field that I'm showing you that it's, magnetism is a little bit different from frequency, like a Rife frequency, because
Hmm.
it's stable. So field and frequency are kind of like siblings
Yeah.
in the phenomenon itself. So by um, introducing a field to the human body, it can alter states.
Fascinating. Oh my gosh. So the first thing that pops up to my mind since I've never heard of this before is kind of reminds me, and you have to like tell me if there's any relation at all of like things like acupuncture and acupressure, but are those just things that kind of like appear similar because it's just like applying things that have to do with like the energy field of the body, or is this different?
Very similar, So, acupuncture and acupressure considers energy meridians of the body, right?
Mhm.
So they map that, Chinese medicine mapped out the body from all these meridians that help you detox, that help you function optimally, kidney, bladder, gallbladder, meridians, all that. So what they're doing, they're conditioning those meridians for functioning optimally with little needles. This is very similar. Yes, so you could consider it as also a sibling modality.
Yes.
So we use magnets on very specific points of the body, and some of it correlates with acupuncture. Now, and then we go from there.
Right on. Okay. Yeah, so maybe you could take me like into the details of your process. Let's say I come to you and then I'm sure people, maybe I'm wrong though, because I'm wondering if people just come to you and go like, "Hey, I just want to do some stuff and I have no problems whatsoever. Let's just see what happens." Actually, is that something that you could do with someone? Like they come to
Absolutely.
you and they're just sort of like, "I want some general improvement," and you'd have to figure something out, huh?
The body can always benefit from certain tune-ups,
Hmm.
tuning. It's like if your guitar is tuned, if you're going to play it, it's going to be out of tune, right? Just like the human body, we use our bodies. If you're exercising a lot, let's say there's lactic acid buildup, you know, I place the magnets when I work out really hard so that the pH gets balanced out between the muscles so that the next day I can go at it again.
Yeah.
I work with guys and girls in Hawaii who are competitive paddlers or, golfers or, other athletes, even yogis, and
Yeah.
and just placing the magnets on areas where you have some tension or soreness. What magnets do really, they enhance circulation and remove inflammation. So by just that approach, can you always use a little better sleep, a little more regulated nervous system,
Yeah.
a little better functioning memory. So if you're all good and you just want to use this as a wellness tool, absolutely. You don't have to have chronic Lyme or, chronic pain or insomnia or whatever it is to feel better. We can use the magnets for enhancing your wellness. And that's really, I love doing that with people who are, doing everything they're doing and they just want another tool that they can have in their pockets, literally.
Yeah.
And when they feel a little off, they just pop it on 15 minutes later, they're good to go.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I guess now I'll move into the what I was going to say before, which is like someone comes to you and then do you have like a process of maybe like figuring out whether or not you can help them? So that maybe they come to you and then they go, "Oh, I have this pain or I don't feel well." And then do they have to come in and see you for you to kind of like figure out whether you can help them?
Great question. Right. So, I work with people remotely too.
Hmm. Okay.
So it's all in the quantum field, right? The information about you or your body, it's all there. So I just have to access it. So when I work with people, either they come in person or online or remotely, I basically connect with their energy field. And then I use kinesiology or muscle testing
Yes.
for identifying those points on the body that they could benefit from balancing with the magnets.
And you're
So,
able to do you I mean, how does that work? This is great because now I kind of want to get into that whole thing that I've never really talked to someone who does the muscle testing,
right.
and I've always been really into that ever since I read. I guess I didn't read like I don't know if he has a foundational book for how he did the applied kinesiology, but Power versus Force by David R. Hawkins is this really popular book, and I guess like everything in the book is like done through this testing process of
Yes.
like, and I really just love that idea of just going. Because I'm someone who kind of like wants to know like things that are very specific and like if something is true or not. And the
Right.
idea of that, like the body has a knowledge, or I don't know if you would call it like the body, but there's some part of you, like in my field, I would call it the subconscious mind, that you can get the real answers from people from their subconscious. And sometimes it's different from what they think that they believe, but you have to ask their subconscious mind, give like yes or no, and they'll be almost surprised by the answer that comes from themselves. You
Hmm.
know, it's that kind of thing where like I don't know, like you have a dream and then you get an answer and you're like, where did that come from?
Right.
It came from you, you know what I mean? But you have like these layers to yourself and the body is extremely intelligent, stores all of this information and instantly knows. You know, when people say stuff like I knew in my gut something was true. And it's like the gut is very much a symbol for like it's just deep, deep in your body instead of the thoughts that maybe other people tell you things and then you think those things are true, but deep down inside, you have like real truth there.
Right.
But yeah, I'm kind of just rambling about the little bits that I know about the muscle testing thing. But I'm just wondering, like, how do you actually do it? Do you have to ask them a question? Do you ask yourself a question? How does that work?
Right. So I always ask yes and no questions. So
Hmm.
if you want to get technical, right, is I ask yes and no questions, and there's so many ways of going about it. And I use different protocols on even creating a priority on what the specific individual needs at the moment. So in my mind is always two considerations. One, I'm removing my judgment from what I think they need. Okay, they come in with, say, MS, untreatable chronic condition, right? Um, an issue of the nervous system. But I say, okay, I'll just say my mind is blank. Let's see what this person's universal intelligence, that's what you talk about, their
Yes.
subconscious, and their intellect, their spirit, there's so like the universal life force, if you will,
Yeah.
which already knows the answers. We just need to access it. And that's the beauty of the work. So, and the second part is what is the highest priority right now?
I like that. Yeah, because there's a lot of things that you could try to work on, but how do you know which one to start with, right?
Exactly. So do I start with nervous system balancing? Do I start with detoxing? Do I start with, let's say, chemical detox or heavy metal detox? Or do I start with emotional pairs that are going to help release certain emotions like guilt, shame, depression, or, you know, um, things like that,
Hmm.
anger, hate, jealousy, whatever. And
Yeah.
there's all these things are stored in the body. As you mentioned, the body already knows what it needs. We just need to be able to access it. And then what I do is in the traditional way of doing this practice is the client is laying down fully clothed on a massage table, and I have a bolster under their knees so that I can use their ankles. I hold their ankles, and I'm asking questions and gently just rocking their feet. And just like a nutritionist or acupuncturist or chiropractor, if you're laying on a
Yeah.
chiropractic table, sometimes they lift your legs or your arm and they check where there is muscle tension or muscle relaxation. And the same thing is what I apply is I'm looking for tension or relaxation, elongation or constriction, basically, because it's only yes and no in the
Yeah.
universal sense. It's
I
either
find that
yes or a
fascinating
no.
because I like it. It's because I'm sure that there's lots of different ways that the body could speak to us.
Mhm.
It's such like a complex way of talking. So you have to find these ways that are like narrow everything down to the simplest, almost like a polarity. So it's like an on-off switch or even like ones and zeros when it comes to like programming. Do you know what I mean? It's
You know,
like how like electrical wiring seems to work. You know what I mean? It's like you either turn it on the switch or turn it off. And that after a while though, I'm really into details today. So I just want to ask about all
love
these
it.
things. Is like one of them is yes and one of them is no. How do you know which one it is?
I agree with the body. So that's one of the questions in the very beginning is to identify the yeses and nos.
Okay. Yeah.
And I can say it out loud or I can think it in my head.
Mm.
It doesn't really matter. What matters is that my focused intention. And yes or no in my world is black or red,
Yeah, like hey, magnets work that way, right? It's
right?
one pole or the other.
That's why I love this. It's so simple. It's one of the universal forces that creates and sustains this world that we live in.
Yeah.
And if you can be quiet and still enough to ask those questions and then listen, that it's beautiful.
I like that too because there's such a humility there of, like you say, like clearing your mind and really just trying to be open to what that person needs. Because it's the opposite of like a lot of stuff that goes on in this world is really like a smoke screen of trickery
Right,
and people doing whatever they possibly can to get more money out of you or to get you to just kind of like sign up for what it is that they want you to do. So it's just like layers of like trickery, like I was saying, and or even maybe they're falling for their own tricks and they start to believe them after a while. Like they have this whole theory, this whole system they've learned, and they're so like committed to that that maybe if somebody were to like slap them in the face with the truth, they wouldn't even know because they no 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 that
right,
doesn't agree with like what I was taught, this like theory of medicine. Um, but that you're basically just saying I'm trying to like not even have any of my own ideas in the way of like
exactly.
maybe because maybe let's say that you were an expert in some field and someone comes to you, you just like say you already knew what you wanted to do for them and every single time you just gave them the same thing like you had like here's a medicine and no matter what I do like I'm gonna give you this one. You're
Right,
going no 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 I need to figure out what I'm working on with you and I'm gonna let you reveal the answer to me.
exactly. Exactly. That's what's happening. I found it, it's an evolution in my practice too. That and that's the hardest part is removing my own judgment. And this is really the hardest part as a practitioner is not to have an agenda. Like I have to do this for them. No, I'm a conduit for them to show me
Hmm.
and then help them by doing what their body is asking for. If I come in and have this push approach and I want to fix your arthritis, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then it doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Hmm.
It becomes this whole chasing symptoms and becomes this whole fixing and becomes this
Yeah.
whole, kind of this push instead of a core, core cooperation.
Yeah. Well, I now have a really interesting question just came up for me. Is part of the muscle testing, do you ask for permission?
Yes. Yes.
Because I'm thinking that I'm like, what if that's like a big part of
It
this?
is a big part. And sometimes I have to end the session because the individual's subconscious says that's it. I'm not going further into my emotions, for example.
Yeah.
And that's really, if you ask me, sometimes that's sad for me. I'm like, hey, come on, let's get you better because your tension or muscle pain is sometimes because you're holding on to a belief or a thought or an emotion or a grudge or something like that. And then that does happen when I have to say, oh, that's it, end of session.
Wow. It's so funny how similar that is to what I'm doing, even though I'm using more like a meditative state,
Yes,
almost like a form of just sort of like talk therapy mixed with like trance states. Um, And obviously, what we're doing isn't the same, but I'm always really searching for what is the commonality between what all of these practitioners do. And I am noticing this is that I like to oversimplify things, so forgive me, is the idea that so much of healing is just getting down to the wisdom of the subconscious mind or the body. And you could say even that it's just the same thing.
that's it.
And going to finding the right people who are just close enough to have like a moment of like, are you ready to do this?
Yes.
And then you get past the barriers, the defenses, or whatever it is that has been holding them back from healing. And then you just have this moment of kind of like vulnerability with the body, subconscious mind, and you just say, are you ready to begin to do this? And it's almost like that asking the question is a little bit of like this critical moment that you create for them, where you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, let's do it now. And then the body goes, oh, no one has asked me yet. It's been
Exactly.
waiting for I've just been doing what you wanted me to do for a very long time. And then it's like, hey, body, are you ready to kind of like take over and do what needs to be done? And then you have to like communicate with it. So there's like parts of ourselves that we haven't been talking to, we've been ignoring for so long. And we go, where are these symptoms coming from? Whether it's like emotional or physical. And hey, and then that's another rabbit hole we could get down, is how you could say there's emotional and physical, but those are really just tied together. There's really no separation. So when you talked about emotions, I was a little bit surprised because you started off talking about, biomagnetic stuff, and I'm thinking, oh wait, so you deal with emotions too, don't you? So maybe you could mention that a little more.
Emotions have a very specific frequency
Hmm.
or field. If you're walking down the street and you see an upset dog who's just barking, right? And about to bite people, you're going to avoid it, right? You can feel it kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
better avoid it. Or if you see an angry person, you can kind of feel that from their field, or they're really upset.
Hmm.
It shows in their body too. Their head might be red, they might be making certain gestures, or road rage, whatever, right?
Yeah.
You can see how they move. You can see going down the road, you avoid it. And so, yeah, it shows up in the field. So every emotion, every feeling, or every pathogen have a certain field that either gets trapped or released. And so, emotion, what is emotion? Energy in motion, right? If it gets stuck and the energy is not flowing as it's supposed to, then it can create physical symptoms.
Yes.
Many clients tell me that they never ever felt so relaxed.
Interesting. Yeah.
I
Like,
just place a few magnets and then they relax. And then sometimes, you know, almost all the cases, there is an underlying emotion that's inhibiting their healing.
yes. Wow. I'm wondering, I don't know, I wonder if this is too personal, but now I'm like, I really want to like push this on you and go,
Okay.
was there emotion going on with you? Because you said you had chronic Lyme disease,
Yes.
but now I'm kind of like testing. I'm like, did you find, maybe you figured it out afterwards? Sometimes people realize something else was going on as well, but was there something like that for you?
Yeah, it's definitely has been a journey for me. People say um, inner work or healing work, right? Healing work is really not just about the body anymore.
Yeah.
And when we say healing, I'm doing my healing, and that's all about what's as within as without. So, there's a book by a Canadian French gentleman, the the Pyramid of Healing,
Hmm.
and he talks about every dysfunction has an emotional root cause. You don't have to agree with everything he's saying, but in a general sense, there are several books like that. And
Yes.
so this gentleman talks about Lyme disease as a disease of separation, and so, my parents were going through a long divorce when I was in my teenage years.
Hmm.
And as a sensitive person, I was trying to always like solve it for them and like get in between them and like make them feel good. And, like I was trying to always mediate or, take care of them as a child. And so that created this vulnerability in me that I learned how to be attuned to others before I'm attuning to myself. And, in my own healing work, that I've been doing over the past, decade or so or more, I am learning on how to take care of myself so I can show up for others first.
Yeah.
So, that is maybe a little insight into my journey into all this.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there actually was a book that found an emotional connection to Lyme disease or something like that.
Yes, yes, and he talks about Lyme disease as a disease of separation.
Yeah, like separation of something in you or like literally like you were saying, your parents
Yeah. It could
separated.
be the parents, it could be within you.
Yeah.
My Lyme disease symptoms got really worse when I moved from Hungary to the US. And within a couple of years, I got bit by another tick in California. So I got the rash and all that. So it was, clearly physical symptoms too. And I got tested and it was positive and all those things.
Yeah.
And, just separation from my family or tribe, all that.
Right.
And so, you can see it in symbology. All these things have a symbology. And, in my work, I'm not necessarily focused on only on the symbology. I'm looking at what the body needs right now.
Hmm.
And then it reveals itself. And when I work with people, um, when they are ready too, that's what, like you said, it's such an important piece of it and such an important, if you will, requirement that you gotta face those symptoms, right? I was working with someone just a week ago, and we finally got to this bottom line root cause of the dysfunction, and it's self-love that this individual never thought they were good enough. They never loved themselves. So in this session, her body was like no more magnets, or she already had a few magnets on herself, but she was in this open state that she was able to admit that. So
Yes.
we worked on, I've been incorporating other techniques and practices into my work, and we worked on finding something that she can love about herself.
Hmm.
And we did find something eventually, and there was this whole cathartic release. Like, you know, she started crying, and okay, there is something I can love about myself, and we can go from there.
Yeah.
I was so close to firing her, but as a client, I'm
Yeah.
like, you gotta work with this. Like, if you're just here for me to fix you, that's not what I do. You gotta be
Right. Yeah,
willing
because
to
people
take
will come to
responsibility.
you in this very kind of submissive, receptive attitude because, a lot of people do like have that idea of like, who do I call to kind of just like fix the problem? You know what
Which
I
is
mean? Like,
different. Yes.
like I have a roof that's broken and they consider, hey, like if something broken in me, just find someone who fixes it. And I don't have to actually change anything. You know what I mean? Like they'll just like fix the outside, like they'll just sew up the cut and then everything will be fine. I don't have to deal with any personal stuff or any other uncomfortable things, right?
Well, you might need to enforce the foundation of your house if your roof is leaking, because there might be the foundation might be sinking, or there might be a tree that needs to be trimmed. You
Yeah.
got to take responsibility for those things. Otherwise, I can go fix your roof, but you bet it's going to be leaking again very soon.
Exactly. So yeah, I see what you mean. You're like, there's more to fix than you think there is. It goes deeper.
Yes, yes. In most cases, yes.
Hmm.
If it's a sports injury and just you're just like tired or over exercised or things like there is always, of course, there's an emotional component of why you're pushing yourself so hard, whatever, which is
Hmm.
not the point of this. But if it's like an ongoing situation, yes, there is most likely there is a emotional component to it.
Oh, okay. No, I was so fascinated by that. Yeah. So let me like kind of go back for a sec. So remind me, is the reason why you got into this kind of the obvious, which is that you went to one of these doctors and you found this so amazing that you just thought, I'm now like really interested in this? Is that what happened?
Exactly. You know, exactly. That's part of my hero's journey is
Mhm.
that was this dissonance in me. I liked what I was doing, but I didn't love it as a project manager. And so I really didn't have a plan, but I had I had a personal experience with this work and the effects of it, and I could see how much better I feel. And then immediately, pretty much, I started putting magnets on friends and family, and all of a sudden their headaches went away, or their neck aches went away, or they could relax finally, or they slept better, or their upset stomach resolved.
Yeah.
And I could see like, okay, um, this is a so much more intimate and and potent way of impacting people's lives for the better than delivering software.
You had to discover that yourself. That's fascinating, though. It makes me, since I like to pretend that every single thing has a fate and a destiny. So, and you can agree or not, because it's just up to, it's your life, right? Um, but I like to imagine, hey, the reason why you had the disease at all was to just force you to figure this out so that you could have that smile on your face where you're just like, this is so much more fulfilling. And it got you here. And it's almost like you imagine like there being like a secret plot to go, how do we get the message to Greg to change his life and begin to research all these new things and become this healer of this type? The only way he'll listen is if we give him this problem and then he has to solve it himself because he's a problem solver. We know it, right? And then he'll figure it out and then he'll want to figure it out for other people.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. If I didn't have to go through the chronic Lyme situation, I would probably not be here.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. If my parents didn't go through that, what they went through, I probably wouldn't have become so sensitive to be able to relate to people, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm grateful for the experience because now I have the tools on actually feeling better than I have for as long as I can remember.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I'm kind of interested where you want to go from here. Do you want to talk more specifics about your work, or are there other things that are related that because I'm sometimes wondering like I wonder if there's other stuff. You got to be really interested in like lots of other ideas going on about like how to work with people or maybe other stuff that's interesting for you. But yeah, where do you want to take the conversation from here? We have a little time left.
Yes, sure. So, now I'm passionate about making this work accessible to others. So, there's so many practitioners who are doing this just like any other practice. And my biggest takeaway and intention is that you're in control of your own life. You're in control of your own health.
Yes.
Own it. Don't subsidize it to anybody. Your innate intelligence already knows, your intuition, if you will, your body intelligence, your gut, your heart, your brain. You just have to listen. If you're willing to listen, and if you're willing to go through the pain of acknowledging the things that you've been putting away or putting off, or really the hard conversations with yourself, with your loved ones, then you're ready. Not
Yeah.
everybody needs to become a practitioner, don't get me wrong, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I developed a introduction to biomagnetism workshop for those who are just like, I just want a wellness tool for, let's say, a headache or a toothache, or, for feeling more sharp, for feeling more energized, for feeling more grounded, all those things for, let's say, any kind of small issues. Dr. Garcia's one of his favorite things he likes to say is, to every ill, there is a pill, according to Western medicine, right?
Yeah.
In our world, to every ill or every problem, there is most likely a pair of magnets.
Got it. Yeah.
So, so what I'm excited about now is how do I take this super, kind of out there concept and make it more accessible to people, just the way we talk about it right now?
Hmm.
And then how do I make my work more available, you know, for, more people, basically, is that you don't have to become a practitioner and you don't have to go through the 5+ day course on learning everything about it. But I can show you a few intuitive practices and applications that you can run with and enhance your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So you teach some kind of a course. What did you call it? Introduction to biomagnetism.
Exactly. It's just a couple hours on a weekend usually. And I go over certain placements, we call them, for the pairs of magnets that you
Hmm.
can use. And it's really an collaborative workshop. So, I take questions. Okay, you're struggling with something. Are you in pain right now? Okay, let's place the magnets. Okay, so how do you feel now? 15 minutes later, the pain might be gone. And I talk about the science a little bit, then I talk about the application, and I talk about certain general pairs for, let's say, stress or being worked up or not being able to sleep or, say, menstrual cramps,
Hmm.
things like that, or injuries or surgeries, recovering from surgeries. One of my friends in Hawaii, he had a shoulder surgery, and I showed him a couple of things to do with the magnets. And both his surgeon and physical therapist were completely amazed and blown away by, like, how did you
Yeah.
heal this so fast? And he was back into paddling um, faster than they ever imagined.
Yeah. Wow. Hmm. Maybe you should be glad that that you have this all to yourself and that, the mainstream world hasn't figured it out yet. They're not onto it, man.
You know, um, there's a consideration about that,
Yeah.
because, and that's why I'm not ever going to talk about pathogens or,
Hmm.
viruses, bacteria, parasites, funguses, because with a set of magnets, you basically have a pharmacy in your pocket.
Hmm.
And so you can avoid taking drugs that will have side effects. You can avoid having surgeries in certain cases. I mean, I work with people that we can shrink tumors, we can dissolve cysts, we can, do kind of miraculous things for their health that are practically unknown or unrecognized for
Yes.
Western medicine. And what I'm also excited about is that now I work with several doctors in their offices, and I'm just so grateful for those connections and cooperations, because these doctors recognize that they don't know everything, and I absolutely don't know everything about the human body. So I'm learning, but I will also not ever know everything about the human body and
Yeah.
mind, right? So we work together because their approach helps with certain things, and then the magnets help in other things. And then,
Mm.
for example, one of the offices I work in, there is a hypnotherapist. In the other one, there is you know, um, a therapist. And so we all work together with the individual who's ready, and we help them make those decisions that they most benefit from in their own healing journey and recovery.
Yeah. Man, wouldn't that be I mean, we're getting there, but wouldn't that be the ideal? Is that every doctor's office would be like either the doctor themselves would be trained in more areas of, more like I guess to be more multidisciplinary or however you want to say it, holistic.
Right.
Or but like you're saying is like not one person can really like do all of that. So maybe it'd be great to be like it'd be this collaboration where every office you go into Maybe that you come in for one thing and then they just go, "Hey, go into the other office." They have something that will actually help you, and because we just want you to be healed in some way before you leave, instead of oh, 'cause I got somebody in another town and he can help you in 6 months, or do you know what I mean?
Right,
All be together.
right. That's the idea, and I feel really fortunate that when I first got started with this, the doctor in Kona in Hawaii, naturopathic doctor, holistic doctor, practitioner, she saw me because I was spending Monday and Friday afternoons in her IV lounge every week. And when I mentioned to her, hey, I'm thinking about learning this, she was extremely helpful and supportive, and she said, you know what, if you do and you get started, I'm going to refer my clients to you. I see what you're going through in your transformation, especially when I started doing magnets every day.
Yes.
And she said, I see how far you came and where you are now, and I trust you. I'll let you use my office. And that's how really my practice just just got started, is that I work with Dr. Roberts in Kona, and then, you know, now I'm in California, work with other doctors, Dr. Blansett in Marietta, and Dr. Tran in Laguna Hills, and others. And I'm just so fortunate to be able to collaborate with them. And really, they say, and that let's see what the magnets do. And they know it's helping people. You know,
Yeah.
there's so many stories I can just bring up. But yeah.
Yeah, did you I'm imagining you taking the doctor and then you go, I'm gonna put the magnets on you, and like you're gonna go in this closet and you're gonna experience this, and they're like, whoa, whoa, get off me, and then, oh, interesting. But I'm guessing that's not how that works when you talk to them, right?
Not really, no. There's no closet. Yes.
There's no yeah, you didn't kidnap them and use magnets. Uh but yeah, I'm wondering, like, did they like undergo it themselves, or is it something that they're more curious about? Because they're kind of like more open to lots of these therapies, or what?
Right. So, the other, yes. So the okay. So my relationships with these doctors have been, so one of them, her husband was in a hospital with kidney failure.
Yeah.
And they called me and I went into the hospital. This was in Hawaii, and worked with the husband one session. And after that, the next day, the hospital said, "You're good to go. You're good to go home,"
Hmm.
which was basically a miracle because the day before they said, "We don't know when you can go." So his markers changed after one session with the magnets.
Yes.
And so, that's the other thing I'm really passionate about, is working with all these doctors. How is that we can take what we do together and measure what we're doing so that it becomes more accessible to others who are more skeptical.
Right. Because at this point, it seems like you have to either like have had it happen to you, or maybe like someone close to you has undergone a transformation, and you go, okay, you're clearly something is different from me, from before. Instead of maybe, like we're just reading online somewhere, and there's just so much information in the internet that you don't know like what's real and what's not. Because there might be things that sound really similar to each other, and you go, how do I know the difference if I'm spending my money wisely or not? Because at this point now there's certain fields that just have so much credibility.
Right.
And so that's why you're doing the smart thing, which is you go, okay, find doctors and maybe something like Western medicine. I'm not sure what you're doing, and that gives you that link, that social link that gives people that hey, if you go to this kind of doctor and you already trust them, look, they're working with you, and they can't be a specialist in everything, right?
Right. And that's what happens. So these practitioners, these doctors usually find me,
Yeah.
which is the, really the highest compliment to my work,
Yeah.
is that I'm not seeking them out. They come to me and they're like,
Mm.
okay, I'm gonna work with you.
Yeah, because I think there's so much interest more than ever before in people just wanting to learn all the different ways that you can explore like new ideas of medicine, alternatives, but now it's like almost not an alternative. It's just people are like, ooh, like let's go to a new form of therapy. And I think I've heard this before too, is that like people will ask their doctor, like, give me more. I want to, there's more places I want to go, right?
Exactly.
And so the doctors are like, oh man, I can't even fulfill my requests. So people like you are now and me are in high demand because people want, they're, they're, they're hungry for more.
I would say it's additional instead of alternative,
Yeah, I like that.
you
Yeah.
know?
I've called myself like complementary therapy, meaning
Exactly.
like, don't go to me instead of a doctor or a
No, no, no.
psychotherapist. Go to definitely do that. Like that's the foundation. And then you can kind of like add on layers.
Exactly. Exactly. And when I talk about when people come to me like, okay, they are going through cancer treatment, for example, and they say, is this going to help with that? And I say, absolutely, and continue what you're already doing with your doctor.
Yeah.
This is going to help your overall detoxification, energy levels, and just feeling better.
Yes.
And there's more to it that I can't talk about.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. No,
But
absolutely. I know what you mean. But it really does go with the idea that you want to watch out for people who say this one thing is all that you're gonna need. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it's good to always like, remind people that you're like, no, there's 10 things that you need to be doing. And I'm reminding you that there's something else. That's another aspect of yourself that maybe you didn't realize existed. Because before I even talked to you, I didn't even know this existed. So it's really just about like making sure we talk more and get more of that information out there.
I would be weary of people who say, this is all you need, take this one pill. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe it will work. But, I'm not saying it you only
It's
need this
like it's
one.
like putting all of your, and like in poker and they go all in, they put all of the chips betting on that one hand in the poker. You don't want to do that. You don't want to invest everything in one account.
No, and sometimes it comes down to when I work myself out of a job with the clients that I work with because that's the goal, that they feel better so they can move on. I'm not creating dependent people.
Yes.
Most of my Lyme, the people who came to me with Lyme, I don't see them after a while because they are back to living their normal lives.
Yes.
And that's great because, you know, first of all, they are back to feeling great and normal, and they are exercising and sleeping well, and their digestion works again. And
Mhm.
then they send their friends and family who also could benefit from certain, you know, tune-ups, if you will.
Yes. I liked the way that you kind of summed everything up. So I'm going to sum it up again in saying that I think what I got from you is that your main philosophy is helping people to to help themselves and to be independent, right?
To trust their innate intelligence.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that's the Greg way of saying it. To
Yeah,
trust your innate intelligence. I like the sound of that. Okay, so yeah, I know that we you could come back and tell me more like case studies and get into more detail about stuff. But I think this was cool introduction to your work. And so I'm going to give you the opportunity to kind of, give people some details on how to connect with you. Let's say I'm interested and I go, yeah, let me sign up for the course. Let me get a consultation with you. How would people go about doing that?
awesome. Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, so um, I have a little survey and a scheduling tool on my website that you can fill out
Hmm.
and pick a time for talking to me. It's a 15-minute, um, basically deep dive into what's happening, what has happened, what you've done, and how this work that I do may benefit you. It's not necessarily that it's not a sales call, it's not a therapy call. It's a it's we check if we are a match working together.
Yes.
So the way you find me is through Instagram, Magnet Master, and replace the A in the master with an E because that's my name.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I like that.
And also, so my website is Mester, Mester method.com.
Mestermethod.com. Okay, yeah, we'll definitely put that in the description, but I like to hear it from your own voice as well, from your own innate intelligence.
I appreciate that.
Okay, and that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for being here, and maybe I'll see you again. Thank you.
My pleasure, Jesse. Thank you for having me.